Hello, I'm Hope Logan. I am an actor on Bold and the Beautiful, and many people really love both me and our Bold and the Beautiful drama. So I've come here to share updates about my beloved Bold and the Beautiful. Everyone, please subscribe and support me. If you do, I will keep coming every day with new updates for you. The battle lines inside the glamorous world of Forrester Creations were becoming sharper, colder, and far more personal than anyone wanted to admit. And at the center of the storm stood two women who had spent years locked in an endless cycle of rivalry and resentment. The latest conflict surrounding Hope Logan Spencer threatened to ignite another devastating chapter in her war with Steffy Forrester Finnegan, a feud that had already torn through relationships, divided families, and poisoned countless moments that should have brought peace. What began as a desperate attempt to save a fashion line was quickly transforming into something far more dangerous, because this time the fight was no longer just about business. It was about power, legacy, pride, and the deep emotional scars both women carried from years of betrayal and competition. Brooke Logan Forrester had tried to calm the chaos before it spiraled beyond repair, urging Ridge Forrester to step in and convince Steffy to reactivate hope for the future. Brooke believed there was still a chance to fix things before Hope's career collapsed completely, but even she could sense how impossible the situation had become. Ridge understood the reality immediately, because no matter how much Brooke wanted peace, Steffy was never going to back down now, not after everything that had happened. Not after Hope had pushed Brooke toward the co-CEO seat in a move Steffy viewed as a direct attack against her authority and her place inside the family empire. That betrayal had hardened something inside Steffy, leaving her colder and more determined than ever to shut every door Hope tried to open. Long before the co-CEO drama erupted, Steffy had already been reluctant to move forward with Hope for the future, but now the idea of relaunching the line felt almost impossible in her eyes. Every conversation about Hope's future seemed to fuel Steffy's anger instead of softening it, and the tension inside Forrester Creations was becoming impossible to ignore. Hallways once filled with excitement and creativity now carried an undercurrent of hostility, as though everyone could feel the coming explosion waiting just around the corner. Brooke's attempt to broker peace ultimately fell apart before it even had the chance to succeed, because Steffy refused to give even the smallest indication that Hope's line would ever return. There would be no relaunch date, no promises, no reassurance, and certainly no second chances. As the silence from Steffy grew louder, Hope found herself standing at a crossroads, staring into a future filled with uncertainty and desperation. For the first time, the possibility of walking away from Forrester Creations entirely no longer felt unthinkable. It felt necessary, and that possibility carried enormous consequences, because if Hope made the daring decision to jump over to Logan and build something entirely new, Steffy might see it as an act of war. The moment Hope even considered taking her talent elsewhere, the game would change completely, opening the door to a brutal new phase of sabotage, retaliation, and emotional destruction. Behind the polished smiles and elegant fashion presentations, a dangerous storm was brewing, and Steffy appeared ready to do whatever it took to ensure Hope never found success outside the Forrester name. The first weapon Steffy could reach for was the legal system itself, turning corporate rivalry into a vicious courtroom battle that could destroy Hope's momentum before it even began. Liam Spencer had floated the idea of creating a brand new line at Logan simply called Hope, believing the concept could give Hope the fresh start she desperately needed. To Liam, it sounded inspiring and symbolic, a way for Hope to reclaim her identity after feeling pushed aside and humiliated. But to Steffy, that name represented something entirely different. She could easily argue that the branding was far too close to Hope for the future, a property connected directly to Forrester Creations and protected under its control. The possibility of a lawsuit suddenly hung over the situation like dark thunderclouds gathering in the distance, threatening to unleash chaos before Hope's new venture even had the chance to breathe. Steffi could use every legal angle available to stall the project, delay production, and bury Logan beneath endless complications and financial pressure. Liam's vision for Hope's comeback might quickly become trapped inside a nightmare of legal documents, aggressive negotiations, and public controversy. Katie Logan Spencer and Bill Spencer could also find themselves dragged into the conflict as they worked alongside Hope to build the new fashion house into a legitimate rival. What was supposed to be an empowering, fresh chapter for the Logan family could instead turn into a brutal corporate war fueled by bitterness and revenge. The emotional weight of that possibility would crush Hope, especially after already enduring rejection and humiliation from the company she once believed was her home. Every step toward independence could be met with another obstacle carefully placed in her path by Steffi's relentless determination to maintain control. And perhaps the most painful part of all would be realizing that Steffi was not acting out of business strategy alone. This had become deeply personal. At the same time, another surprising shift was quietly taking place beneath the surface of the family drama, one that could complicate Hope's situation even further. Brooke's reaction to Ridge's confession had stunned nearly everyone around her. When Ridge admitted he could not simply remove Steffi from power just because Brooke wanted it, many expected another emotional explosion between husband and wife. Instead, Brooke responded with surprising calm and maturity, accepting the reality of the situation even though it hurt deeply. More shocking still was the supportive text message Brooke later sent to Steffi, a gesture that caught Steffi completely off guard. For a brief moment, it seemed as though the endless tension between Brooke and Steffi might finally soften into mutual respect. That small act of understanding may ultimately change the balance of power in ways Hope never anticipated, because Steffi could begin viewing Brooke not as an enemy, but as a valuable ally. And if that happens, Hope could suddenly find herself standing alone. Steffi may decide to approach Brooke directly, asking her to intervene before Hope takes the leap to Logan and escalates the feud into full-scale warfare. In Steffi's eyes, Brooke might be the only person capable of talking sense into Hope and convincing her not to work for what could become Forrester's fiercest new competitor. The emotional complexity of such a request would place Brooke in an agonizing position between her daughter and the fragile peace she had finally begun building with Steffi. Brooke would understand Hope's pain and desperation, but she would also recognize the catastrophic consequences that could follow if the rivalry spiraled further out of control. Every conversation between mother and daughter would become loaded with tension, heartbreak, and impossible choices. Hope might feel abandoned if Brooke appeared too willing to cooperate with Steffi, while Brooke herself could feel torn apart trying to protect both her family and the future of the company. Even if Brooke's efforts failed, Steffi might still pressure her into becoming part of the mission to sabotage Hope's career move. The emotional fallout from that betrayal could leave wounds far deeper than either woman expected. But if legal threats and emotional manipulation were not enough to stop Hope, Steffi might eventually resort to even more ruthless tactics to destroy her rival's fresh start. Should Hope move forward at full speed with launching a new Logan line, Steffi could decide that the only way to win would be to completely undermine Hope's credibility and public image. The fashion industry thrives on perception, and Steffi understands better than anyone how quickly reputations can be shattered under the glare of public scrutiny. She could begin tearing Hope apart in the media, framing her as disloyal, opportunistic, or creatively dependent on the Forrester brand. Interviews, whispers, insider leaks, and strategic press manipulation could slowly poison the excitement surrounding Hope's new beginning before the first design even reaches the runway. The emotional devastation of watching her dream attacked publicly would hit Hope with crushing force, especially after fighting so hard to rebuild her confidence. Yet Steffi might not stop there. In a move that would send shockwaves through the fashion world, she could even choose to revive hope for the future without Hope herself attached to it. The cruelty of that possibility would be almost unbearable because it would allow Steffi to weaponize Hope's own legacy against her. Imagine the emotional sting of seeing the brand Hope once poured her heart into relaunched under someone else's control, its success used as proof that Hope herself was never truly necessary. The timing alone could devastate the debut of Hope at Logan, stealing media attention and overshadowing everything Hope hoped to accomplish. Katie's efforts to build a successful follow-up project after Eric Forrester's designs could collapse beneath the weight of Steffi's aggressive retaliation. Every celebration Hope tried to embrace could suddenly become tainted by fear, competition, and emotional exhaustion. What should have been a triumphant rebirth might instead transform into another painful reminder that escaping the shadow of Forrester Creations would never be easy. And through it all, the feud between Hope and Steffi would only grow more volatile, fueled by years of resentment that neither woman truly knows how to let go of. As tensions continue rising, it is becoming painfully clear that this conflict is no longer heading toward reconciliation. The deeper Hope reaches for independence, the harder Steffi may fight to pull her back down, and every new move threatens to trigger another devastating retaliation. Families could fracture even further, alliances could shift without warning, and emotional wounds that once seemed healed may be ripped open all over again. Inside the glittering world of high fashion and family legacy, the rivalry between Hope Logan Spencer and Steffy Forrester Finnegan is evolving into something darker, more dangerous, and far more emotional than ever before. And as both women prepare for the next battle, one truth is becoming impossible to ignore. Neither of them appears willing to surrender, no matter how much destruction lies ahead. The atmosphere surrounding Forrester Creations continued to grow heavier with every passing day, as though the walls of the legendary fashion house themselves could feel the hostility building between Hope Logan Spencer and Steffy Forrester Finnegan. What once appeared to be a professional disagreement over a struggling fashion line was now spiraling into a deeply emotional war driven by wounded pride, betrayal, and years of unresolved resentment. Employees whispered behind closed doors, executives exchanged tense glances during meetings, and every room seemed charged with the uncomfortable awareness that another major confrontation was inevitable. Hope could feel it everywhere she went, in the silence that followed her down the hallway, in the cautious sympathy from co-workers afraid to choose sides, and in the cold resistance radiating from Steffi whenever their paths crossed. The company that had once represented Hope's dreams now felt like hostile territory, a place where every effort she made was met with suspicion or rejection. And yet, despite the pain and humiliation, something inside Hope was beginning to harden. For the first time in a long while, she was no longer thinking only about survival. She was thinking about revenge, reinvention, and proving that she could succeed without anyone's permission. That growing determination only made the situation more dangerous, because Steffi could sense the shift happening inside her rival. Hope was no longer pleading for approval or waiting patiently for another chance. She was preparing to walk away and create something powerful enough to compete directly against the Forrester empire itself. To Steffi, that possibility represented more than a business threat. It felt personal, almost like a challenge to the family legacy she had fought so hard to protect. Every sacrifice Steffi had made for the company, every battle she had endured, suddenly seemed at risk of being undermined by Hope's refusal to stay down. The emotional tension between them became sharper with every interaction, their conversations filled with carefully hidden anger and quiet hostility that could explode at any second. Even Ridge began to realize that the feud had reached a terrifying new level, one where logic and compromise no longer carried much power. Brooke tried desperately to hold the family together, but the cracks were spreading too fast. The deeper she looked into Hope's eyes, the more she saw a woman who felt cornered, abandoned, and dangerously close to making a life-changing decision. Meanwhile, Liam Spencer found himself pulled deeper into Hope's orbit as her strongest source of encouragement and emotional support. Liam could see how devastated Hope had become after being repeatedly shut out by Steffy, and the injustice of it fueled his frustration more every day. He believed Hope deserved another opportunity, not endless punishment for mistakes that everyone else seemed allowed to move past. The idea of launching a brand new line at Logan stopped feeling like fantasy and started becoming something real, something achievable. Liam painted vivid pictures of what Hope's future could look like: a fresh company, creative freedom, independence from Forrester politics, and a chance to finally build something that belonged entirely to her. Those conversations slowly reignited a spark inside Hope that she feared had disappeared forever. For the first time in months, she began imagining herself not as a victim of Steffy's decisions, but as the architect of her own comeback story. Yet even in those hopeful moments, fear lingered beneath the surface because Hope knew Steffy would never sit back quietly and allow such a move to happen uncontested. And Steffy was already preparing for battle long before Hope officially made her decision. Behind the scenes, she began examining every possible weakness she could exploit if Hope tried to establish herself at Logan. Legal teams could be consulted, branding rights could be challenged, corporate pressure could be applied in ways that would slow Hope's momentum before she ever gained a foothold. Steffy's strategic mind was already several steps ahead, calculating how to protect Forrester Creations while simultaneously crushing the threat before it could grow stronger. Yet beneath all that calculated control was something far more emotional and volatile: fear. Deep down, Steffy may never openly admit it, but part of her understood that Hope's departure could actually make her stronger. Away from the constant shadow of Forrester politics, Hope might finally evolve into a genuine rival capable of competing on equal ground. That possibility terrified Steffy more than she wanted anyone to know. It was easier to paint Hope as reckless and undeserving than to acknowledge the frightening truth that Hope still possessed talent, resilience, and the ability to inspire people when given the chance. As rumors of Hope's possible move spread further through the fashion world, the pressure surrounding Brooke intensified dramatically. She suddenly found herself trapped between two impossible loyalties: her daughter's future and the fragile peace she had only recently begun building with Ridge and Steffy. Every conversation with Hope became emotionally exhausting because Brooke could hear the heartbreak buried beneath her daughter's growing determination. Hope wasn't simply chasing another career opportunity. She was fighting for her dignity after feeling repeatedly dismissed, rejected, and pushed aside by the people who once claimed to believe in her. Brooke understood that pain more than anyone because she herself had spent years battling judgment and rejection inside the Forrester family. Yet she also knew that if Hope launched a direct rival against Forrester Creations, the fallout could devastate everyone involved. Families would split further apart, business alliances would shatter, and the emotional damage could become irreversible. The weight of those fears haunted Brooke constantly, leaving her emotionally drained and uncertain about how to protect the people she loved. At the same time, Steffy's surprising openness toward Brooke began creating an entirely new emotional complication. Their recent moments of understanding had softened years of tension between them, and Steffy seemed increasingly willing to trust Brooke in ways she never had before. That trust gave Steffy confidence to make a difficult request, asking Brooke to stop Hope before things escalated beyond control. The conversation carried enormous emotional weight because Steffy genuinely believed Hope's move to Logan would ignite a corporate war that could damage the entire family permanently. She urged Brooke to convince Hope that working for a rival fashion house would cross a line from which there would be no coming back. Steffi framed it as protecting the family, protecting Ridge, and protecting the company Eric Forrester had built with his own hands. But beneath her calm words was an unmistakable desperation, because Steffi understood how dangerous Hope's independence could become. Brooke listened carefully, torn between empathy and heartbreak, fully aware that no matter what she chose, someone she loved would end up devastated. Hope, however, was already moving emotionally beyond the point of no return. Every failed conversation with Steffi, every silence from Ridge, and every delay surrounding hope for the future pushed her closer toward embracing a future outside Forrester Creations entirely. The pain of feeling unwanted slowly transformed into determination, and that determination gave her strength she hadn't felt in a very long time. Instead of begging for another opportunity, Hope began imagining what it would feel like to finally stand on her own without Steffi holding power over her future. She envisioned fashion shows bearing her own vision, creative meetings free from judgment, and the freedom to rebuild her confidence away from endless hostility. Those dreams became intoxicating, almost impossible to ignore. But the closer Hope moved toward freedom, the more aggressive Steffi's tactics threatened to become. Public attacks, media manipulation, and ruthless business moves loomed over the horizon like gathering storm clouds waiting to unleash destruction. And perhaps the cruelest possibility of all remained Steffi's potential decision to revive hope for the future without Hope herself attached to it. The emotional symbolism behind that move would be devastating. It would send a brutal message to the fashion world that Hope as a person was replaceable, while the Forrester machine remained unstoppable. If Steffi relaunched the line at the exact moment Hope debuted her new Logan brand, the media frenzy alone could drown Hope's comeback before it even had the chance to succeed. Headlines would compare the two women endlessly, turning their personal feud into public entertainment consumed by fans, critics, and industry insiders alike. Hope could find herself watching reporters praise a version of her own creation while questioning whether she ever truly mattered to it at all. The emotional damage from such humiliation could cut deeper than any business loss ever could. Yet, even with all those threats hanging over her future, Hope might still choose to move forward, because staying at Forrester Creations now felt like surrendering the last pieces of herself. As the rivalry continued spiraling toward another explosive chapter, it became increasingly clear that no one would emerge untouched from the coming battle. Ridge stood caught between his daughter and the woman he loved. Brooke risked losing trust from both sides no matter what choice she made. Liam's loyalty to Hope threatened to pull him directly into the center of the war. Katie and Bill could soon become targets themselves if Logan evolved into a serious competitor. And through it all, Hope and Steffi remained locked in a painful cycle neither seemed capable of escaping. Their feud had grown beyond simple jealousy or professional rivalry. It had become a collision between two women fighting for identity, legacy, and control over the futures they believed they deserved. And as emotions continued boiling beneath the glamorous surface of the fashion world, one thing became painfully certain. The next move either woman makes could change everything forever.